Oh, hello there, guys. This is gonna be the recording I'm gonna be making for the compositing with pretty much a step-by-step guide of all the things you need to do in order to submit the project. We have covered this many times in class. I'm just gonna do a sort of recap and then going through all the steps that you need to do in order to finalize the scene, and then we're gonna move on into doing the rendering and then put it together and then put it in DaVinci Resolve. But for now, we're going to start from the beginning, pretty much, which is just getting the images. To start with, what we can say is that the first thing that I ask you guys to do is just, according to the brief, is to have two images taken from a place from a different angle and then integrate a CG element into it. So I ask you to have a camera, a DSLR, that can record raw files and JPEGs if you want to, but with a raw file you can produce a JPEG as well if you want to, but normally these days these cameras they do both. So another thing that I told you was to record the information about the camera model, the focal length of the camera, and the with the camera model you can find the rest of the information. But if you can get some of the information here by just going to onto the JPEG and then just right click and then just going to properties, and here on detail you should be able to see the resolution of the image, the model of the camera, and as well a little bit of extra information that be quite helpful, in particular the focal length. That's something that we're going to be using inside Maya in order to recreate the camera. So what we're going to do now is just with information, we're going to come back to this later on, but I'm just going to close that. But all cameras have different file formats. The Nikon has this file proprietary format called .nef or .nef, and by having that, you obviously if you double click on this, it will sort of Windows trying to sort of open the image for you. But if you want to have that full power, what actually you can do with it is that you can open it in Camera Raw, and that's what we're going to do, because when you shoot a JPEG image, the JPEG images already have all the information burnt in, the gamma curve and all that, plus it's 8-bit image, and you won't be able to do much of a color correction. And I'm going to show you in a second what we can do with this image, because if you open the raw file is as it is the data that the camera, the sensor of the camera capture, so you can later on manipulate it, pass it through Camera Raw, and then you can literally just do a few changes and recover some of the detail and tweak it a little bit. And that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to right click on this, and I'm just going to go into open with, and I'm going to set to open to with Adobe Photoshop 2020. Well, you might be having a different version, but pretty much the same. So opens that up, and then it fires this sort of UI, which is the Camera Raw. So the Camera Raw, what it is pretty much reads the file, all the information, the data you have there, and then give you this little sort of handy UI that you can individually tweak certain element or aspect of the image. One of the things that for this image was that when I recorded it, I probably do a little bit of changes in terms of the way I capture the image. One of the things, for example, you can tweak here that if you click here, you can see that pretty much all the information here is gone. Other thing as well that you can probably notice from the image is it had this sort of yellowish overall cast, and that is because I didn't set the white balance properly. But the good thing is that you can tweak him now in RAW without having the issue that you might lose a little bit of information. So in order to do that, you can play around with this and then save it, and then you can just record all the information. One of the things that I want to do is just recover a little bit of information from this, because when I shot this, I exposed to the interior lighting. So everything appears here is quite sort of defined, but the things outside, they were quite bright, so they're quite overexposed because of the exposure. It was sort of calibrated and metered to be used indoors. So the same happens if you meter to the outside, then everything will just start seeing more detail inside, but everything inside will be very, very, very dark. So what we can do is we can bring a little bit more information for that. So what we can do is perhaps we can just change the exposure a little bit. Perhaps you can see if you change the exposure, you might be able to do that, but you pretty much kill the whole detail. So maybe exposure might not be a good idea. So other thing we can do probably, because this is considered to be a highlight because it's a bright area, we can just knock down the highlights a little bit and then just bring that down a little bit. You can see that I can sort of bring a little bit of information. So if I click here, you can see by just doing this, I can just bring a little bit of information down, a little bit. You can start seeing a little bit of the break information here. So I'm gonna put it all the way down, and then maybe the the whites as well. I can knock it down a little bit, so I can do a little bit there, and then let's play around with exposure and see if we can do something about it. Just maybe a little bit here, that's fine. The blacks, I can just lift them up a little bit, so I can probably bring a little bit more information from here. So if I lift the blacks a little bit, you can see that there is a little bit more information in there. You can see here in this area. But apart from that, I think the major thing that I did with this was I want to get rid of this sort of orangey overcast. So what I do, I'm gonna bring a little bit more the temperature towards the blue. So by doing that, I mean, if you put it here, it will go really, really burn. So by doing this, I can actually sort of balance it out. You can see how these three curves, the red, the green, and blue, they need to be sort of in the middle together the best you can. So once you do that, so you knock down this a little bit, you can see that they start making a little bit more sense. So you see this is too shifted, but then when they do that, there's a little bit of a good overlap around. Probably not too much, probably around there. So I sort of capture a little bit more the information. I could, I think the exposure we did talk about, now the contrast. So the contrast, we can play around with it if we want to. But mostly here, it will be pretty much depending on the shot that you have and depending how you set up the camera. But you can recover a lot of information. And there is more other options here you can do. So you can just knock down the highlight and clip them. This is for clipping the curve, so you can knock down the highlights and the light and things like that. But I think we're gonna probably leave it like that for now. But anyway, so when you do this, you pretty much accept this. You said you're done with it. Okay, and that will be open into what did I do? Okay, let's try that again. I think I just should have done the let me try that. Open with Photoshop. I think what I do there says open image. Sorry, I should have clicked open image. Down it's just a setting, but the good thing is it remembers the setting, because if you go back to here, every time you do things like that, it will create this little XMP file, which is a file, an XML file that pretty much store all the information on the tweaks that you did here. And every time you open the file again, it remembers that. So it's not, you don't want to lose anything. So now here we have the raw file open. And all you have to do is go into image, because we need to produce here a EXR file that we're going to use as a background image inside the compositing software, DaVinci Resolve. So you have to go into mode and put this to 32 bits, okay? And then once you do that, you save this as, and then you make sure you are in EXR. Yeah, open EXR, and you save the file as an EXR, okay? So I think I already did that. Let me double check here. We have JPEG. I think I might save it into the play, but that's all right. What we can do, we can just probably quick save it here just to have it. So I'm gonna go back to Photoshop and I say File, cancel this, save as, and then here I'm gonna save it as Open EXR. So if you don't put the stuff to, if you don't put the setting here, image, just mode to 32, you won't be able to save an EXR. So you need to put that first. So we just save as, and I'm just gonna keep it with the same name, and I'm just gonna put EXR here. I think I got it there somewhere to save, but that's all right. So you can see it. So I save that. Tell them keep the same. This is just a compression. Wavelet is fine, and you save that, and that's done. You close this. That is all done. So now you should have a file here that you can work on, and that will be the EXR that we have here. So we're going to be using the JPEG to recreate the camera in Maya. Okay, so that's going to be next in the next part. But for now, what you need is, from this stage, you need to have an EXR file for your original composite that you're going to do in DaVinci Resolve, a JPEG, which is going to be the one that we're going to be using for just aligning the camera in Maya, and then the original here, that's the raw file that you will need in order to produce these two files, or at least this file. Okay, so that's it for now, guys. So thank you very much. I will come back with part 2 in a minute. Okay, thank you. Bye bye.